All right, so I want to talk about LinkedIn marketing. So I'm going to give a little bit of a preamble at the beginning. So if you want to fast forward a minute, that's totally fine. Go to you can go for one more minute. So what who I am is Dave Masnack. I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. So the whole reciprocity thing started out as me creating some sort of software to make my work easier, right? So I was struggling with writing, as one does, as I do in academia. And writing has never been a thing for me. So I was like, well, I am this sort of professor of entrepreneurship and innovation. Hell, why can't I build this thing? So I built this thing, it was a long journey. And I built this thing, or we built this thing. I got contract manufacturers to build it, developers. And then we put it out on the internet. And absolutely nothing happened. It was just total crickets. It was a disaster, right? Like, as you sort of think about it. But I look back and I was like, well, this is really normal. This is kind of what the process actually is with all this stuff. This idea that you can put something on the internet and it's going to become like, ooh, this big thing, we've only seen a few things that have exploded overnight, like ChatGPT, for example, Facebook. And these things are so rare, but most circumstances, it's just kind of this low, slow, grinding thing that happens. And how I actually started getting into this content marketing thing, or I actually like to talk about, is more of like storytelling than anything. A friend of mine said, I was sort of telling him about this, and he was like, well, just why don't you do YouTube videos? And so I started doing YouTube videos, and I started talking about that. And then as I started doing this, I realized that people like this stuff, not about the technical content, not about what you're actually what is actually going on with the thing that you're actually trying to market. But, they like stories. People like to know who you are. And so I started telling a little bit more stories about who I am and what I'm about and all of my insecurities and all of those things, just kind of letting it out. And it's almost like this really big, massive therapy session in a way where it's like one-sided and I'm just kind of talking to my phone. And by the way, don't buy any of the fancy equipment and all that kind of stuff. That's garbage, right? But what you do over the long run, or what ends up happening over the long run, you start to understand yourself and you start to understand other people in terms of what they're getting at. So the idea with LinkedIn content marketing, and this is how I sort of evolved with this. I'm big on LinkedIn now, like big, whatever that means. So I talk on LinkedIn, and I talk about how I feel and what's going on with me and what is going on in my head and all of those things. And the truth is that it often resonates with other people. It resonates with what they're actually saying. It resonates in a broader sense, because there's more than just me that thinks this way. And so the challenge that I often face, right, when you're doing these kind of things, is being scared to actually say something. What I have realized, and this is kind of an iterative thing, as long as you think about the other person and you are giving encouragement and rooting people on, right? So the idea, we have a natural bias as human beings to go to like really negative things and try to chew out everybody and say how things is just a disaster. But instead, if you turn it around, you start thinking about, how can I cheer on other people and stop focusing on myself and stop, that idea of tearing other people down. And I start just trying to encourage them and cheering them on and saying how, just it really is. We live in a really wonderful world to the large extent. I know that there's like weird things that happen and that makes me uncomfortable. But, like for the large extent, the world is pretty amazing. And I just want to encourage people in that sort of sense and tell the stories about what is encouraging. And I think if you sort of phrase and think about your story in terms of who you are and what you're doing, and really get at the heart of what you're trying to do. And you can find all sorts of people talking about this kind of stuff, right? Whether it's the vision or mission, or Simon Sinek, I think, talks about like why, or I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, like just telling what's happening, right? Like documenting what's going on. Like all these people that really what we're talking about, what is going on, is just being you and being open, right? As who you are as an individual, and really getting into that, but also realizing that other people are following along. And frankly, people like to be encouraged. They like it. I think the message of being positive, being helpful, really encouraging people to do their best is very desperately needed for a lot of people, not just myself, not probably just you, but many, 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 many people. Because think about this, right? I want you to think about this. So in kindergarten, we're encouraged to do our best, do amazing things. All through elementary school, we're encouraged to do that. And all of a sudden, for some weird reason, once we're done, 10th grade or 12th grade, all of that support is gone. And for most of us, many of us, right? Unless you have a significant other that encourages you on. So there's a great need, and I think it's going to be for a very long time, of just people encouraging you and telling stories and being who they are, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. I think if you really start breaking it down, people just want to be human. And instead of thinking about how I'm going to sell you, or all of these, the kind of the sleazy, fast, kind of hacky stuff and all that kind of stuff, if you just get people to follow along on the story, why you're actually doing this, right? So for me, I'm trying to solve my problems of writing, but also I'm hoping that many other people can, get their problem solved with this platform as well, right? Like with work, getting their work done is really, really hard. And why can't we have something like this? And why can't it be this organic process that kind of evolves over time? And I'm just kind of whittling away at it, day in and day out, and we're just kind of working at it, right? Like my wife and I are sole funding this. We're just putting in, this is me trying to sort of do something that I think is really positive and encouraging. So I think we all need to sort of do these things, and connect to the world of telling your story, whatever that might be, right? And the goal, and there's one more other thing that I think is important, right? It's not going to happen overnight. This idea of building friends, and that's kind of more along the way, it's closer to the way that I look at this than anything, than marketing and all of that kind of stuff. Building friends is really hard, right? Like I have been burnt so many times, and I guarantee you've been burnt so many times in business relationships and friendships and all this kind of stuff, that I am very cautious. I think people are, for the most part, pretty scammy. And I need to be there for a long time, showing up for a long, long time. I need to be there for a decade, 2 decades. So it just shows up and says, hey, I'm here. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to be here. And I think after that, a long time, then you start building real friendships. And that's where I'm going to at this moment, is trying to remove the hacky crap that everybody talks about, and just get back to being a human being. Because I think fundamentally, what we do in this world is fundamentally human. And that means connecting with other people. And connecting with other people takes a long, long time. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. There's no magic. It takes a long time, grinding work for decades and decades. But then also, being yourself, telling stories, really getting into who you are as a person. If you do that for long enough, good things happen, I think. Anyways, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.